Hey everyone, welcome to the React crash course. Are you struggling to learn React and finding yourself stuck in tutorial hell? Then this crash course is perfect for anyone who wants to learn React and start building their first project. After watching this course, you will be able to code in React with confidence and succeed in React interviews. In this course, we will learn what is React, why should you learn React, and we will use the latest version of React, which is React 19. JSX, components, props, conditional rendering, how to style your React app, React hooks, and many more. So let's start with what is React. So React is an open source JavaScript library for building user interfaces, particularly single page applications. It was developed by Facebook, now Meta, and is widely used for front-end development. In traditional website, entire page reloads for every user interaction, but in SPS, which is stand for single page application, the entire website does not reload for every user interaction. The only parts get updated which is required. React provides component-based architecture. It means we build UIs by creating reusable components. React uses something called virtual DOM, which is a lightweight representation of real DOM, means document object model. Basically, virtual DOM is a large JavaScript object. Whenever anything changes on the web page, React compares the new virtual DOM with the previous virtual DOM and check what part is exactly changed and only update that part without reloading the entire page. This process is also known as reconciliation. React is declarative, means we describe what the UI should look like, and React handles all the updates. We don't manually interact with the DOM. When React was created by Facebook in 2011, the core problem Facebook want to solve to improve the UI performance for Facebook's news feed. And after that, Instagram adopts React to build UI. Why to learn React? React is a very popular library. If you go to the GitHub page, it has 238k stars, and React is the most used front-end library worldwide. Companies like Meta, Netflix, Airbnb, Uber, all of this company uses React for building UI. It has wider community support around the globe. So if you are stuck at something, then there will be always answer on the internet. And also the major reason is if you are preparing for a front-end developer role, the very first skill recruiters will ask you about is React. Almost every company expects front-end engineers to know React because it's the most used widely library in the industry. So if you want to break into front-end development, mastering React should be your top priority. Not only that, React also provides React Native, which is used for mobile development. So after learning React, React Native is like a cakewalk. You can build mobile apps using React Native, which uses React syntax. So all of these reasons motivate you to learn React. Then let's move forward. Also, if you are preparing for a front-end interviews or just want to level up your front-end skill, then check out frontendlab.io, where developers are building real projects and mastering the skills that actually matters. Now let's dive in. First, let's download Node.js. So you can go to nodejs.org/en/download website, and from here you can download Node.js according to your operating system. So you can see for macOS you can install the installer, and after you can follow these steps which will download Node.js on your system. You can also download it using nvm. So you can copy this command and paste on in your terminal, and after that you can do nvm install 22 or any other version, but I'll recommend to install latest version of Node.js. So Node.js is required to be installed on your system because it is a JavaScript runtime which run JavaScript outside the browser. So we run JavaScript in the browser. Every browser has a JavaScript engine which runs JavaScript. But to run JavaScript on our system, we need Node.js. Node.js is built on top of Google V8 engine, which provides to run JavaScript outside the browser. We can run on terminal, we can run on server, we can run on our system, etc. So after downloading Node.js, we are going to use Visual Studio as our IDE. You can use any IDE as per your choice. So you can go to code.visualstudio.com/download, and you can download it for Windows, Linux or Mac. You can also download it for Intel chip, Apple Silicon or universal version. So now let's open Visual Studio Code. So I have created one folder, React Crash Course. Now let's create a React tab. Before that, you can go to this extension tab and install this Prettier Code Formatter. So this is a very famous extension which can be used to format our code. So make sure to download it. After that, let's create a React tab. To create a React tab, like there are multiple ways. So there is a thing called CRA, which stands for Create React Tab. The command for CRA is npx create react tab /. So it will create a React tab in this directory. But we are not going to use CRA, we are going to use Vite, because CRA is now deprecated. Like this is provided by React team itself, but now it is no longer maintained. So we are going to use Vite. So if I go to Vite.dev, you can see it is a modern tool for building next generation of web applications. Vite is also very fast. The development build for Vite is very fast compared to CRA. The bundle size also very small compared to CRA. So we are going to use Vite. So to create React tab with Vite, the command is npm create Vite @latest. So we are going to use the latest version of Vite, then /. So first we have to select the framework. So I will select React. We will go with JavaScript. Yeah. So the boilerplate code is created by Vite. Now we have to run these two commands. But before that, if you see, I am using this npm to create the React tab. So from where npm is coming? So when you download Node.js, npm also get installed automatically. So previously when we download Node.js, the npm was not installed automatically. We have to download it separately. But now downloading Node.js, we will also download npm on your system. So we can say it stands for Node Package Manager. So using npm, we can manage our packages. As we see this folder structure, you will also know what npm does. So now let's run this command npm install. So npm install will install all the dependencies. So all the dependencies are installed. You can see added 152 packages. Now let's see the folder structure. So I will close this terminal. Let's start from the bottom. So first we have a config file vite.config.js. So this is a configuration file for Vite. Here you can like customize the build process, add plugins. So you can see on line 5 we have added a React plugin. So this file is similar to webpack.config.js. After that we have a readme.md file. So this is a standard readme created by Vite. So you can also like customize this readme and tell more about your project. But currently in this readme file we have two links for React plugin and for ESLint. If you want to read more about it, you can follow this both link. After this we have package.json file. So this file is maintained by npm. So you can see we have dependencies, dev dependencies, scripts and some metadata about the project. So package.json file contains all the core metadata of our project. So you can see the name of the project, the private attribute, the version, the type, and after that we have scripts. So these are npm scripts which we can run to start our server, to build the project, to run ESLint, etc. So previously we run the command npm install. So that command installed all our dependencies that is mentioned in this dependency object and dev dependencies object. So the difference between dependencies and dev dependencies is that dependencies also run on production. So when you create a production build, these dependencies are also used, but this dev dependencies is only used in development mode. This is not used in production mode. You can also create and define your own scripts in this object. Now let's see the next file, package.log.json. So this is also a very important file. So in the package.json we have the dependencies, like we currently have two dependencies, React and React DOM. So you can see the version for React is 19.1.1. So we are using the latest version of React, and for React DOM, the version is same. This package log.json file, like it somehow like log the version of your package. So what that mean is, whenever we like, let's say we have deployed this project and some other user on their system is using this project, so that will make sure, this file will make sure that what dependency version we are using currently is the same version that user will also use. So let's say we are using React 19, so that particular user will not use React 18 or any other version. It will use the exact version that is mentioned in the package log.json file. So it ensures the same versions are installed on every machine. So whenever we install any new dependency, this file is auto generated, like this will be auto generated and this will be automatically modified. We don't have to do anything in this file. Now let's see the next file, index.html. So in the entire project we will have only one index.html. So this has the normal HTML syntax. We have the head tag and body tag. So here the main part is this root div. So when we will see the app component, then we will able to know what the importance of this root div. So first let's modify the title, React Crash Course. Okay, and this also have one script which points to main.jsx file. We will see this later. So let's go to eslint.config.js. So this is a eslint file, like it has all the eslint rules. So now let's move to .gitignore. Here we can put all the files that we don't want to push on GitHub. So for example, node modules, this dist folder, or we can add one more file here, .env. So env file contains all our environment variables, and we don't want that environment variables to be visible on GitHub. So we can also put this .env in .gitignore. Now we have a source folder, public folder, and node modules. So first let's see what is this node modules. So if I go to package.json, we have these dependencies and dev dependencies. So for these dependencies and dev dependency, the code for these dependencies are written in node modules. So you can see here we have for Vite, we have for, like there are many dependencies. Here we can also see the React DOM. So you can see React DOM. So this file is automatically generated when we do npm install. So this is a very huge file containing dependencies and dev dependencies code. Now we have the public folder. So in public folder, like we can put all our assets and images. So whatever goes to publics will be as it is. Like if we bundle our app, we does not do anything with public folder, like it will be a static file. So in source, let's start from bottom. So first let's go to main.jsx file. So this is the root file of our React app. So if I go to index.html, you can see the path for this script is main.jsx. Main.jsx is basically an entry point for our React app. So from this file only our React app starts. So you can see we have the create root function which is imported from React DOM/client, and here we are doing document.getElement by id, and the id is root. So this is the div that we are referencing in main.jsx. So we are getting this root div and we are rendering this app component. So first see what is this create root. So create root is coming from React DOM. So if you see, we have React and React DOM. We have two libraries for React. So the difference between two libraries is React provides all the core functionalities like states, hooks, JSX, components, etc. All these provided by React library. So we use React library to create the UI of our app, and the job of the React DOM is to put that UI on the browser. So React DOM do all the magic things of React, like taking our component, converting into a HTML element, and using virtual DOM, it updates the component and render that component on the browser. So without React DOM, like we can't render our component on the browser. So you can see it provides create root, which create the root for our app, and after that it calls the render method, which basically put our app component on the browser DOM. So strict mode is a special wrapper component provided by React, which does not render on UI, like it does not render anything on the UI. It helps us to find potential problems in our code, deprecated API, etc. So let me remove this comment. Now let's see the index.css file. So this all the CSS is written by Vite itself, so we don't require the CSS. So let's remove all this. Now let's see the app.jsx, but before that first let's see the app.css file. Here also we have all the CSS which is not required, so I will remove it. So now let's see the app.jsx file. So this is the entry component in our app. So let's remove this div and h1 tag, we don't require it. Let's also remove this state, later we will see what this mean. I will just return one div with hello world. Okay, now let's see what is this app function. So basically this is a component. So what is component? So a function which returns a piece of JSX is a component. Yeah, that's it. If any function returns a JSX, then it is a React component. So what is JSX? So you can see the thing I have written here, this div, it is a JSX. So it looks like HTML, but this is not a HTML, this is a JSX. You can see the file extension is .jsx, not .html. So basically that means we can't write HTML in this file, and this function is a JavaScript, so we can't write HTML in a function. So JSX stands for JavaScript XML. So it is a way to write HTML like syntax in JavaScript file. So why do we write JSX in React? So basically this JSX later converted into a React.createElement. So this line of code will be converted into React.createElement by Vite. So we can write like this also, React.createElement div, or we can create h1, we can create p tag, etc. Writing code like this is a very lengthy thing, like if we want to create one element we have to write like this, then if we want nested element, then this code will become very complicated as the components grow. So writing JSX is a very simple thing, like it is like a HTML like structure, and if we are writing code in React, then we already know HTML, so that helps a lot for creating the component. So after writing JSX, this is converted into React.createElement, because browser does not understand what is JSX. Browser only understand HTML, JavaScript and CSS. So we convert this into a React.createElement, and after that we saw the React DOM library. So this is basically converted into a real HTML. So like this div with hello world. So this is a simple definition for how this component is converted into a HTML by React DOM, and how Vite help us to convert this into a React.createElement after React DOM take this component, this function React.createElement, and using virtual DOM, like it converts to a HTML structure which browser understand, and after that this syntax, this HTML is rendered on the browser. So now let's run the React app. So let's spin up the server. So to start the server, if you go to package.json, we have this script dev. So we can copy this dev and we can write npm run dev. So to run any script, we run this command npm run and then the name of the script, the key, the dev, build, lint, preview, etc. So you can see our React app is started and it is running on the server 5173 on the localhost 5173. So you can see we have hello world. Okay, now let's go back to app.jsx. So what is the advantage of JSX? So here you can see we have this simple hello world text, but we can write expressions also. So if I write 2 plus 2, so can you predict what will be the output? The output will be 4. So you can see the output is 4. But what if if it was a HTML, then you know what will be the output. The output will be 2 plus 2. So the expression won't be calculated like we have in JSX. So we can write expressions also. We can't write the entire JavaScript code here. We can only write expressions. Expression means something that returns, like 2 plus 2 has a output 4, but we can't write functions here. Like if I write let's say a function start, so this will return a error, like this will throw error. If I open the console, you can see functions are not valid as a React child. This happen if you run return start instead of start from render, or maybe you meant to call this function. So you can see we can't write JavaScript statement, we can only write expression. So let me remove this. So now let's create one more component. So we can create a folder components, and then we can create a component in that folder only. But for simplicity, I will create one more component here only. Function calculator. So we can also create component using arrow function. So this is a normal JavaScript function. We can also create using arrow function. So like this. Let return one div. We can do 2 plus 2. Okay. Now we have created one more component using arrow function. Now how to use this component? So we have to I will remove this line. So you can see we don't have any output on this, but we want 4 output, which is in this calculator component. So now we have to call this component. This is simply a JavaScript function. So if we want to call a function, how we call function? So we call function like this. Calculator, we provide parentheses. So if I go here, you can see the output is 4. So basically we are calling this function which returns a JSX. That JSX is converted into a React.create element, and that is picked by React DOM, and finally we have the output. This is also one way to call this component. So one more way is we can call this component. So this is the another way we call component, and this is only used like if you browse any repository or any React project, this is how we call the component. So if I go to browser, you can see the output is 4. Now what we can do, what we have to do, we have to pass something to this component, and that thing we want to be rendered. So for example, we have to pass sum, and this sum should be 4, and sum should be printed. So now passing something to a function is like passing argument. So how we are pass argument? So if I go here and do calculator, and we can pass 4, and we will receive this parameter. So if I comment this code, and if I see the output, we have 4. So we have passed this argument 4, we receive this parameter here, and we render that output. Now we have to do the exactly same thing using this syntax. So we don't want to use this syntax, we want to use this syntax. So here it is very simple. We have to just write the name of the property and the value. So 4. Okay, so now let's see the output. Does not get anything printed. So let's see what is happening. So let's print this sum. So whenever we pass any property, it passes as a object. So if I print this sum, you can see it is a object. So to access sum, we have to destructure it. So we can do something like this. So now 4 is printed. Another way is we can receive this as props, and we can do props.sum. So you can see 4 is printed. So whatever property we pass, we also call it props. So prop is a very widely used term that we use for passing properties. So the property passed as a object, like here we get all the properties that is accumulated as a object, and we can access it using props.property_name, or we can directly destructure it. So this is a clean way to get the property from the component. So 4 is printed. So what we are doing here, we are passing a property to another component. So this is like a parent component, and we are passing from parent to child. So this is a child component. So we are passing data from parent to child. And these props are immutable, meaning we cannot change it. If we change this sum here, for example sum equals to 10, then 10 will get printed here, but this sum does not change. So we should treat prop as a fixed value. So child component treat props as a fixed value. So now let's see what is state. So state is a data that is managed in our component. So unlike props that we pass from one component to another component, this state is exist within the component and can be changed over time. And whenever the state changes, the component gets re-rendered. So I know you have some confusion like what is re-render. Okay, we have some data that we stored in state, but how it is stored, how React manages all of this. So we will see all of this using counter example. So we will create one counter app, like we will have one button, and clicking that button will increment the counter value. So let's see if we can create a counter app without state. So for example, if we want one counter, then we have to also store the counter value. So in normal JavaScript app, what we will do, we will create one variable. So for example, let count equals to 0. Okay, and we will show this counter in the div. So I will make this count 1. I will wrap this in a button element. So you can see we have this button and the value is 1. Okay, if I click this button, nothing changes. Now what we have to do, clicking this button should update the count value to 2, 3, 4, 5 and so on. So what we will do, we will add on click event, and we will call one function handle increment. We will create this function here, and what we will do, we will say count plus equals to 1. Okay, so whenever the button gets clicked, this counter increments by 1 and we will able to see the latest value of count. So let's see. So if I click this button, nothing changes. So let's print the count value. So after incrementing it, I will add a console log. So now let's see. So if I click the button, the count value is incrementing, but we are not able to see the latest value in the UI in this button. But the variable is incrementing, like we have the latest value in the console, but on the UI it is not showing. So this is a basic variable. Whenever this variable changes, like we will able to see the latest value in this function only, but this does not re-render the component. To get the latest value here, we have to re-render this component without missing the previous value. So one more catch here, if this component gets re-rendered, then this value count equals to 1 will get reset and we will not able to see the latest value even if the component gets re-rendered. So to achieve this behavior, we use something called as hook. So hook is a special function in React that let us use some magical power of React. For example, use state, use effect. There are multiple types of hook that we can use in our component. So let's start with use state. So I will create one variable here, count. Let's delete this variable, count, set count, use state, and we will give the default value 0. Now what is this syntax? So first of all, this is a use state hook that comes from React. You can see this is not coming from React DOM, this is coming from React. So this React library gives us a magical power that we can use state, use effect, different types of hook. So this use state is a JavaScript function. So if I command click on this, you can see it is a simple function that takes a argument initial state and that returns a array, and this array has two values, two elements. The first one is this generic s and second one is a function. So that means this function returns a array. So if I cut this entire syntax and if I only log this count, let's see what gets printed. So you can see we have one array with two elements. First one is the default value and second one is a function. So the first element of this array is this value only, whatever we provide here. Let's say I provide 99. So you can see the first value is 99. So whatever we give the initial value is the first element of the array. And what is the second one? So second one is a function. So what does this function do? So this function is used to change this value. We can't change the value directly using this 0th element. We have to change the value using this setter function. So what I mean by that, first of all, we will destructure it. So this returns, every time this returns a 2 element. So we will destructure it and store it in a 2 variables, count and set count. So count is this value 99 that we saw here, 99, and second one is a function. So this is this one, set count. So we write this like count, the same name, and we write a prefix set. So now let's see what this count gets printed. So it is printing 99, which is expected. Now we have to change this value. Let's reset it to 0. In the previous example, we were able to change that normal JavaScript variable, but that value was not reflecting on the UI. And the reason was because the component needs to be re-rendered to give us the latest value. And if we change the normal JavaScript variable in a React component, that does not re-render the component. React does not able to identify which states changes and whether the component should be re-rendered or not. React only re-rendered the component if we are using the useState or any other hook. So let me do set count and we will set it count plus 1. So now let's see. So if I click this value, you can see the console, on the console we get the latest value of count, and here also on the UI also it is changing. Okay, let's see the syntax, how we change the count value. So we are using this function, and in this function we can provide what value we need to set. So for example, I can give 100. So whenever the button clicks, like it sets the value 100. And what we are doing count plus 1, means 0 plus 1, 1. Then again when this button gets clicked, 1 plus 1, 2. So every time the previous plus 1. So to write this in more better way, like we have written count plus 1, this is also fine. Or we can write this syntax using previous plus 1. We are passing one callback function, and from that callback function we are returning previous plus 1. So previous will be 0, then 0 plus 1 will be 1, then again 1 plus 1 will be 2, then 2 plus 1 will be 3. So previous means first it will start with the default value, and as we increment the value, it will have the latest value in the previous variable, and after that we will just add 1 to it, and this entire syntax will return the latest value, and that value will be set in this count variable. So let's see. So if I refresh the page and click on count, so it is incrementing. So to understand this in more detailed way, so whenever we call this function, this setter function, this entire components re-rendered. So you can see I have added this console log. So you can see whenever I click this button, you can see the output we get here in the console. Means whenever this setter function gets called, React re-renders the entire component, and then it shows the latest value on the UI. And while re-rendering this component, it does not reset the value to 0 that we saw in the normal JavaScript variable. So this is also a very important interview question, like why do we use useState versus normal JavaScript variable? So you can tell all of these reason to the interviewer. We have also added this on-click handler. This is like HTML syntax where we add like this on-click only, but here we are using the camel case. So this is JSX. So we, for every attributes we pass in the element, we have to use the camel case syntax. We can't use on click. So if I write on click and Let's see. So you can see it is not working. Invalid event handler property on click. Did you mean on click? So we have to write in camel case. So to summarize, we use hooks to store data in our component. So anything we want to store, for example user or this counter variable or any kind of data that we want to store in our component, we use this useState hook. Now let's see one more very important hook, UseEffect. So let me remove this and I will write UseEffect. So this is also comes from React library. Let's remove the useState and also let's remove this button component and let's write hello world. So we use UseEffect hook to perform side effects in our component. So what I mean by that is, like for example we have to fetch data from an external API, so we can do using UseEffect. For example, if we want to listen to any event or subscribe to any event or remove any event handler, we can use this UseEffect hook and etc. Let's add one console log UseEffect called. So you can see UseEffect called gets printed. Okay, so how these hooks work? So this is also a simple JavaScript function. If I command click on this, you can see it is a simple JavaScript function which accepts two parameters. First one is a callback function and second one is a dependency list. We will see this parameter later, but first parameter is a callback function. So we are passing this callback function. So this is the first parameter and this is the second parameter. So let's remove the second parameter. We are only passing this first parameter. So this parameter is a function which is called by React after this component gets rendered. So there are three ways to write UseEffect hook. So this is the first way. So this console log will get printed every time this components re-rendered. So I've rewritten the previous example of our counter app. So let's see. So if I click this button, you can see on the console every time I click this button, this UseEffect called gets printed. So that means this component gets re-rendered whenever this set count happens, and every time this components gets re-rendered, this UseEffect also gets called. And also remember one thing, this UseEffect only gets called after the synchronous operation. So what I mean by that is, first JavaScript will return this div. It will not block whenever the first line gets executed, then JavaScript come to this line. It will not block the thread. First it will run all the synchronous code that we have in our basic JavaScript, and after that when this JSX is returned, every synchronous code is run. Now this UseEffect gets called. So for example, if I add a console here, console.log count, so you will see this will not get sprint first this line will get sprint and then this line. So let's see. So if I refresh the app, you can see first count is gets printed and then this line is printing. So that means first the synchronous code will run and after that this UseEffect gets called. So let's remove this. So every time we click the button, this UseEffect call gets printed. Now if we want to prevent it, we want to only print this whenever this component first time mounted. So we can use the second parameter which is empty array. So now if I click this button, you can see when I refresh the page, the UseEffect call gets printed. When I increment the button, you can see nothing gets printed in the console. So this prints only one time whenever the components mount. So this is also known as dependency array. So second parameter is a array which we call dependency array. So here we can provide all the state variables. This will called only one time when the component renders. But for example, I am printing count here. Okay, so now let's see what happens. So when I refresh the app, UseEffect called with value 0. If I increment the counter, so in the console the latest value of count is not printing. So in the dependency array, we can pass the state count. So we are telling React to run this UseEffect every time this count variable changes. So now let's see. So if I click this button, you can see on the console we are getting the latest value. So this is the second way of writing UseEffect. First one was without this dependency array, and that runs UseEffect every time the component re-renders. The second one with a empty dependency array which runs only once when the component mount, and after that if component re-renders multiple times, this UseEffect will not get called. But we can pass some dependency array that will tell React to call this callback function whenever the state changes, and when the state change, when we click on the button. Now what we can do in UseEffect, we can return a function. So that sounds like a weird thing, but yeah, we can return a function. But what it does, so let me write the syntax first of all. So we will return a function and we will log cleanup function called. So this is known as a cleanup function. So first of all, let's see the output. So if I refresh the page, so UseEffect called 0 and then cleanup function called. So if I increment the count, you can see first cleanup function called, then UseEffect called. First cleanup function called, then UseEffect called. So this cleanup function gets called in two ways. First way is whenever the component unmount. Unmount means whenever this component gets hidden from the UI, this UseEffect will get called. And whenever the component is unmounted, so for example, we want to clean up any event listener, or we want to unsubscribe, or we want to clear the timer, so we can do all of the cleanup things in this function. And the second one is, so whenever the UseEffect function gets called, before that this cleanup function gets called, and after that only this UseEffect callback function gets executed. So if I repeat, this cleanup function gets executed in two ways. First, when the components unmount, and second, before calling the UseEffect. So you can see in the example, if I increment the counter, first this cleanup function gets called, and after that UseEffect callback function gets executed. So we saw three ways to write UseEffect. First, without dependency array, then with empty dependency array, and then with some dependency, and then we saw the cleanup function. Now let's see what is conditional rendering in React. So in plain English, it means render UI based on some conditions. Just like in JavaScript, we have if, else or ternary operator, and we can use this inside JSX. So for example, we have this counter value. Every time this button gets clicked, we increment the counter value. So we want to show the text after this button if the value is even or odd. So how we can achieve that? We can take one p tag, and here we can write expression count modulo 2 triple equals to 0, then we will show even, else odd. So let's see the output. So currently 0 is a even number. If I increment the count 1, it is showing odd, even, odd, even, odd, even, odd, even, odd. So you can see based on the counter value, this text is changing. So this is a conditional rendering, like based on some conditions we are rendering the elements. Here we are rendering the text. So this is very useful when you work on a real project, like you have many conditions in which you have to render or show something. So for example, if user is logged in, then show the logout button, else show the login button. So there are many use cases in which we use conditional rendering. And one more thing, when we are passing this on-click handler, handle increment, we have to pass like this, because if we directly call this function, so whenever this JSX gets returned, this function also gets executed. So if I save this file, you can see too many re-renders. React limits the number of renders to prevent an infinite loop. So every time this component is returned, this function is automatically gets executed. But we want this function to be executed when we click on the button. So we can, without parentheses, we can call this function, or else we can pass a callback function and we can call this function like this. So if I refresh the page, and we can see counter value is incrementing. And here we can also take the event listener, like this provide all the event related to this button. For example, event.target, event.target.value if it was a input component, etc. So now let's see how we can style our app. So for example, for the button I have to give background color, and I have also give some padding and font size. So what we can do, we can pass class name that we pass in normal HTML but with camel case in JSX, and I will give the class button. Okay, then we will go to this app.css and we can give, let's say, background color red, padding 8 pixel and 16 pixel. Let's see the button. So you can see we have applied the style. Now let also set the border to none. Also let's give border radius 8 pixel. Yeah, so it has a border radius. Let's text color to white. Okay, now it is looking good. So this is how, like, this is a very simple example how we can style the button. Now let's see how we can achieve routing in our React app. So if I go to flipkart.com, it's an Indian e-commerce website, and if I go to fashion, then men's t-shirt, so you notice the page entirely refreshed. Now if I go to some category, let's say t-shirts, so you notice the URL of the page is changed but the fully app has not refreshed. Now again if I go to jeans, again the URL is changes but the app is not refreshing. So this is a single page application. So we want to achieve this similar behavior in our React app also. So to achieve this, React does not provide any library or APIs for routing. We have to use external libraries, and one of the popular library is React Router DOM. So if I go to React Router DOM, so you can see we have to install this package. So I will copy this command, open new terminal, and I will install it. And we are currently using the latest version of React Router DOM, which is 7.8.2. Okay, now let's go to the documentation of React Router DOM. So go to docs, declarative. So you can see first we have to create a router using create browser router function, and after that we have to use this router provider component and give all our routes. So let's start. So I will go to main.jsx. First I will import create browser router. I will also import router provider. Okay, so first we will create the route. So const router equals to create browser router. So this expects an array, so I will provide an array. Then we have to give one object. So the first path will be root. So here we have to, so this path is HTTP localhost. So if I go to Chrome, the home page, so our home page is this app component. So I will give the element app. Okay, now we will use this router provider. We'll remove this app component, router provider, and we will give the router. Okay, so now you can see it is working as previously. We have the app component hello world. Okay, now we want one more route /contact, and if I go to contact page, you can see currently it is throwing an unexpected application error 404 not found because we don't have contact route. So let's declare one more route here. So first we have to give the path. So path will be /contact, and then we have to give the element, like if user go to /contact path, what element we want to render. So here we can give the functional component, but currently I will write just one div and with a contact text. Okay, now let's see. So you can see in the /contact route we have this contact page. Now let's declare one more route /about. So path slash about, and then we have to give the element. So I will create one about component. So in source I will create one folder components, create new file about.jsx, and then about component. So I will just return one div with about text, and we will export this, export default about. Okay, now we have to import here. So element about. Okay, now let's see the about route. So if I go to about, so you can see the about component got rendered. Now I'm going through this route from this address bar. So in the home page I want two buttons that will navigate me to about and contact page. So let's go to the app component. So to achieve this, let's go to documentation, go to navigating. So we can use this nav link component. There is also one more component which is link component. So the difference between nav link and link component, like for nav link it also provides the active state which tells us whether the link is active or not, but if currently we can use the link component because we don't want the active state. So let's go to app.jsx, let's do link from react router DOM and about, and then we have to give the path. So to here we can provide slash about, and same for contact slash contact. Okay, now let's see the output. So let's go to home page. So we want some gap here, so I will apply the style here only. So display flex, also provide gap, so gap will be 1 rem. Okay, now if I click the about button, see, notice we go to the about page but the app is not refreshing. Now let's go back, let's go to contact page. So you can see the app is not refreshing fully like we saw in Flipkart. So this is how we can achieve routing in our React app. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this React course. Also, if you are preparing for front-end interviews, then you can go to frontendlab.io. So here we have many front-end challenges that you can practice to crack front-end developer interviews. So you can see from hard to medium to easy, there are lots of challenges that you can practice. So you can do a sign up for free, and you can see already there are many developers are creating their first project. So make sure to sign up on the website and start creating your first project. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. I will meet you in the next video.